Speaking of reliability, a podcast with good friends talking with you about reliability engineering topics. Welcome to Speaking of Reliability. This is Fred Schenkelberg.
And this is Chris Jackson. And we're going to be talking now about reliability goals and how we set them up and what makes good ones.
Oh, we should have done this back in December so that it would come out on New Year's. Did you set any, I heard it rephrased instead of, what do they call it? New Year's, I want to say goals or objectives is resolutions. Now, coaches and other people are saying it should be an intention. It's easier to break an intention than a resolution and not feel bad about it. But a goal I see all too often is set like a resolution. It's like, oh yeah, we'll make it super reliable. What do you mean we have to buy better parts and actually pay attention to manufacturing and have reasonable suppliers? That costs money. We're not doing that. And the goal just kind of is just on the wall and nobody pays attention to it and stuff. So I've seen that way too many times. Or the other way I see it is like, so how reliable does your product need to be? And one person says, well, we have a 5-year warranty. Okay. Well, how reliable does your product need to be at the end of that 5-year period? Oh, I don't know, but it should also last for 20 years because that's, we want them to buy ink or whatever to use it. Another one is you look in the engineering document and they have warranty on page 17 and they have the duration kind of stuff in page 98. And there's a whole bunch of functions that's usually pretty good, what it's supposed to do. And it's used worldwide, indoor, outdoor. In like by who and how and what kind of use cases does it have? None of that's in there. So I often see bits and pieces of goals. But somebody will say, oh, it's supposed to never fail. Okay. Why are you setting these goals? And the last one I'll mention as a quick story is I worked with a group that their engineering requirements document had all these tags in it, these little markers that had a number on it. They're like footnotes for something. And I'm like, what are these things? And he said, the quality department goes through there and they say, for final sign off, it has to meet this requirement. And so reliability related stuff wasn't tagged at all. And they didn't call it a goal. They called it an objective. All right, so what's the difference? He says, well, the quality group doesn't know how to measure this, so they can't tell whether it's met it or not. So they don't want to put a requirement. They don't want to make it a requirement because then they have to check it.
Right. I've had that too, and it's just mind-numbingly insane. I didn't know the quality control group could veto requirements for customers or users.
Well, they didn't. They said it's still there, but it's not important because we're not going to check it.
Oh, sorry. In my scenario, I was dealing with a medical device company. The quality control team was adamant that if they couldn't test it, it couldn't be included as a requirement.
Oh, really?
And yeah. And so you had things like requirements which were, must be easy to use. Quality control, gone. Mm-hmm. How can you measure easy to use? Get rid of it. We can't test it. We can't validate it. We can't verify it. Gone. Which is, at the very least was quite prevalent in the medical device industry I was exposed to, which is why you see some medical devices, or at least you used to see medical devices, which were inexplicably complicated to use, including those self-injectable ones. When they first came out, there were buttons here and LCD screens there and, dosage this and the buttons you had to press were teeny tiny, which made no sense because the patient was likely going to be 70 years or older, who not an idiot by any stretch, but not as strong as they used to be. Their eyesight wasn't as good, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It was just, I didn't realize you were the emperors. But anyway, back to your story.
No, but that's what I mean is there's so many cases where either the goals are set haphazardly by various different fractions that contribute to the requirements document. Oh, we need a warranty, all right? But they just give a duration. They don't say what proportion should survive through the warranty period, it should just work for the customer, all right? Which customer? what group of customers? Do they live on boats, or are they in the space? And like a satellite one, they typically have two sets of environmental requirements: the launch and their operation in space. Completely different atmospheres and completely different sets of environmental stresses. Both very important. Yet when we talk to folks about, well, how do you get your product to your customer? Oh, somebody else figures that out. And it's like, and you're putting in a humidity sensitive device into transport systems that you're not setting any requirements that it should be protected in those cases. And they're like, so setting a goal, but why, with so many bad examples, why do people set a reliability goal? Why should they? I guess is the better question.
Well, I think, well, why do they? I think people set reliability goals often just to feel better that something's done or something's said.
That's a good point. Yeah. I think there's something like that.
Yeah. So it's like testing. Sometimes people test because they don't know what to do to make the thing reliable, and humans can easily confuse effort with outcomes. And so testing is a lot of effort. And yes, you might get some information, but unless that information is going to be used to inform a decision, it's just there's no outcome. But we often
outcome. Yeah. I read in one group they had 45 different, last stage, last prototype gauntlet this product had to go through, and they spent weeks organizing, ready to run all these products through this gauntlet of tests. And I said, why do you have so many tests? Well, we put a test in place for every time we have a field failure so that we make sure we don't have it again. Well, when was the last product that went out that had no field failures? Never.
Yeah.
And I looked at the list of stuff and I said, when was the last time your product had one of these devices that you have a test to see if it works or not? And they didn't even have that device anymore. It was like, we're going to do a melt test, but we're using steel now. And it's not it's an ambient environment. And I'm like, do you really need to check if it's going to melt when it's not possible for it to melt in your cases? And they kind of looked at themselves and what we've always done that. And like, no, you didn't. You put it in there because something melted one time and you fixed it by design. Stop testing it. But I've heard people say we set a reliability goal so that we can track and monitor, are we hitting that with our field reports, the field returns that come in. Is it above or below what we expected? And so we have something to gauge it against, because we use the goal to set the warranty accruals, which I found in most cases is not true. The finance department's smarter than that. They say, well, what kind of history do we have of this product line? Let's set it based on your history, actual field data, and warranties paid rather than that. I've heard goals are set to give direction to the organization. And then it's coupled with I say, what are the rank order of priorities for this project? Time to market, cost, functionality, or reliability? Rank order these. And reliability almost always, in 200 plus assessments and talking to almost 8 to 10 people per, so thousands of people, put reliability at either third or fourth in that ranking, unless they had a major reliability problem recently. Then it was number one, briefly.
Right.
And and you've heard the stories. I talked to 3 different people working on the same product with a circuit board within a product. One was, our goal is really hard. We had to gold plate everything. The next guy is, it's really easy. We don't, buy the cheapest, whatever. Working on the exact same circuit board. And the third one was the manager. And she said, well, we don't measure it, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it's just whatever you can do to avoid accountability. And that's, I think, one of the important things for reliability goals is they need to be feasible or feel relevant.
But also part of the decision process. It's a part of the trade-offs with everything else. If it's just ignored after the goal is set, then even if it is feasible, then it's not useful. But yeah, I think your feasibility one is, we want it to never fail. Well, that's wishful thinking. What are you really acceptable level that you can actually help your team make decisions on? Because you'll never ship a product that will never fail.
Right. And I think it's also another important question to be able to answer is when it does fail, how will it fail?
Mm-hmm.
And that's a really good test, I find. Because if people just look at each other and scratch their heads and go, oh, I don't know, it's
Well, we don't test
we're
the failure. We're success oriented.
yes, yeah, there's that one. You go, okay. Well, success oriented is knowing when it will fail, and that failure is going to occur beyond the horizon that matters. Um, there's a difference between being success orientated and being disorientated. Um,
not,
so
not much in my experience with some of these folks.
no. Well, no. I genuinely believe there's a difference. I just think they mislabel disorientation with success orientation. Well,
Yeah,
if
that's
I'm
true.
disorientated, I can't see the failures scenario. So we're all about success in the absence of failures. Nope, the failures are right there. You're just not looking for them. That's not success orientation. Success
Yeah.
orientation is knowing how it's going to not work and being able to do something about it. Yeah, so I think the relevance of feasibility is very important. Sometimes a business case will suggest your reliability needs to be 99%, for example, but your historical reliability performance is 90%. Improving from 90 to 99% in 1 year is not possible. As a rule, that's pretty hard to reduce your failures by a factor of 10 in 1 year. That's pretty challenging to pull off.
Yeah.
And so you might have incremental goals. You say, okay, let's get it to from 90 to 93. Then next year it's 95, then it's 97, and
Yep,
98, then 99. That's more pragmatic and often way more successful because it's seen as feasible.
And I've seen organizations, they get a factor of two. They'll cut their failure rate in half by going from not paying attention to reliability at all to paying attention to it and using a bunch of this design for reliability stuff we talk about all the time and paying attention to it. And they set a goal, but I had that discussion with them. It's a 4-element goal. And you put it right up front, and it's a requirement. It's not an option. If this is what you really need to be successful in your market, then why isn't it a requirement? And so the program manager, yep, we'll figure it out. Can you help us figure out how to measure it? Yes, I can certainly help you with that. And they went from really getting hammered in their market and losing market share and everything else to one cycle doing twice as better. Got rid of a lot of the infant mortality stuff, which was their bane. And then over a period, and I got less and less involved with them as they learned how to do it, and they incrementally got better and better at it. And a different client showed me a graph. It was just a plot of weekly failure rates for their product launch, after their product launch, and it would drop down a little bit, and then it plateaued. And they says, that's still too high. What do we do? And it was, I think, what went from 3% to 2% monthly failure rate kind of numbers.
Right.
And okay, here's what we did: an assessment, worked with them, and figured out a couple of things they could do better and anticipate failures, do better designs, stuff like that. And about 5 years later, they came back and showed me almost the identical chart. And I looked at the scale and says, well, you've made a lot of improvement. You're now starting at 1% and you're plateaued at 0.5%. And they said, now what do we do to get better? That's a good question. Instead of taking the eye off the ball, off the focus on improving reliability, what they found in the meantime is that the reliability goal is, at first, it's used by the design team to accomplish an improvement and improve the reliability performance of the product by lots of different means. But then it becomes an expectation of the customers that your product is reliable. And then, of course, they're going to want it to be more reliable and less expensive and last longer and all that other good stuff. So it's the goal is not one and done, and you always get 99%. It's a reflection of what it takes to be successful in the market. And it reflects just about every decision in the design process. It has to be a part of that. What are the impacts of reliability? How is this going to improve it? Or what's going to be a trade-off here? Or where are we investing, making improvements? So that we can achieve the goal. We can put a whole bunch of money in the keyboards, but we know from history, they almost never fail. How about we go work on this power supply? I always pick on power supplies. and make it more reliable, because that's the thing that fails most often. The goal overall doesn't mean everything has to be at that level. It just means, or at a supporting reliability that's good enough, so you can achieve your goal. It's a guide for you to make decisions where to invest. And that's why we set a goal, so that you know where to focus. And I think so many people get the system level goal and then check, we did that, and they're done. It just baffles me, and I think there's lots of reasons for it. And we talked about a few of those, but what other ways is having a goal useful?
Well, just before you move on, I mean, when you say we tick that box, that's why it's very important to understand the value you're trying to achieve, because the reliability engineers often come across as boring, useless, non-value adders who just, yeah,
Doomsday
absolutely. People. But if you know what your organization would like to achieve beyond the reliability goals, that's really useful. So, for example, if your reliability improves to 99% for your 2-year warranty period, well, your boss wants to hear a reliability engineer come up and say, hey, boss, we're at 99% for 2 years. That means we could possibly offer a 3-year warranty period. Now we're talking.
And here's the cost, and here's the associated savings, and here's the customer satisfaction changes. Here's the things that matter because we hit that target. It's not, the target itself is hard to interpret, but that means that we have 50% less field failures, and each field failure costs X amount of dollars. So we avoided, $18 million in field returns, or whatever the number is.
Right. Yeah. So what that means is that you now become valuable. And it's not just a tick and flick exercise. People say, hey, Bruce or Sally from the reliability engineering crew, they worked out we can actually extend the warranty period. We'll be able to tolerate the number of warranty repairs. And of course, we'll be the first product to offer a 3-year warranty period.
Mm-hmm. And here's the marketing's take on it. And this is what it may mean to market share, kind of thing.
Right. And let's not think that for 1 minute that doesn't matter. It's not unusual for vehicles these days to have 10-year warranties for good part of their system. Yeah. In the 1950s, it was a 3-month warranty.
Yeah, taillight warranty. As soon as your taillights go around the corner, the warranty's done. But there was some bold company that said, we're going to do 10 years, and then bit the bullet to make it happen. I think part of the story at HP was they said, we need to cut this by an order of magnitude. And one of the steps they did is they went from a 3-month warranty to a 1-year warranty. And it made it more uncertain if you were going to meet that reliability objective or target or goal. So the engineers designed more conservatively, made a more reliable product, so that not only did they meet the new goal, but they had a lower failure rate than they did when they only had a 3-month warranty.
Right. And there's always going to be someone in the market who does that. You can either choose to be the organization which sets the aspirational or meets the aspirational warranty targets that customers will inevitably want, or be the organization which is perennially trying to play catch up. Yeah, that's where reliability engineering becomes valuable, where you're able to say, hey, we can now do this.
Yeah. And setting a goal is a first step if it's integrated into your program and system and many, many decisions. It's part of the trade-off analysis we make in engineering all the time. Is it reliable enough is a part of that. And there's more to it than just setting one goal. It's apportionment and modeling and estimates and getting some feedback to the team, are we on track or not. Those all still matter. So set a goal, make it rational, feasible, and something that you actually implement and embed within the thought process of your organization. So, well, it's so much fun talking about all the disaster goals we saw. And I have seen some really, really good ones out there and executed extremely well. So if you're listening to this, if you got a good story or have a question about this, and the short time we talked about it, there's probably a dozen questions about how do you actually do this, let us know. We'd love to talk about it. and get you some answers right away, and then put it on the queue to talk about in an upcoming podcast. Let us know. Head over to accendoreliability.com/go/SOR, and you can find a couple of ways to get in touch with us. Even leave us a voice message. Or you can find us on LinkedIn or our About pages on accendoreliability.com. So plenty of ways for you to get in touch with it. So Chris, we should set a goal for how many comments we get from this episode.
So,
make it a stretch goal.
If you and I give 20 each, I'm sure we'll meet them.
Yeah, there you go. But anyway, good talking to you, Chris. We'll talk to you later.
Always a pleasure, Fred.
Thanks for listening to Speaking of Reliability. We invite you to join the conversation. If you have a question or a topic that you think we should discuss in a future show, please let us know. You can find a comment box below the episode show notes, or just leave a note as part of a review on iTunes.